Leadership isn't just changing, it's evolving in ways we're only just beginning to imagine. And women, we're not playing this game anymore. We're the ones reshaping the entire field, building models, movements, and businesses that serve more than just a few. On the She Leads podcast, you'll hear real conversations with women who've broken through all kinds of barriers: revenue, identity, borders, and expectations. There's no sugarcoating here, just the truth, told by those who are living it. I'm Adrienne Garland, entrepreneur, strategist, educator, and creator of live experiences, gathering women leaders together for over a decade. And this is the She Leads podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the She Leads podcast. I'd like to kick off today's episode with a little request. If you haven't done so already, before you listen in to this incredible episode, please pause and take just a minute to give the show a 5-star rating and review. The reason that I'm asking for that is because it's so important for me to share the journeys, wisdom, and lessons of the women entrepreneurs and leaders that we feature here on the She Leads podcast. And the best way to give these women the kudos that they deserve is to rate, review, and share the show with anyone who's interested in seeing more women leaders in this world. And I hope that's everyone. Thank you so much for helping to share our incredible show with more people. Now, my next guest is someone who is truly extraordinary. I have known her for years and years, and I love her. She is a networking strategist, a speaker, and a 2-time author. Kelly Hoey has spent her career making the case that the right relationships change everything. Recognized by Forbes and Inc. for her influence, Kelly brings years of research, extensive client work on the power of social capital, and her own hard-won reinvention to the subject. Her next book that's out now is called The Social Billionaire. It's her second book on networks and her most personal. I cannot wait for you to hear from my next guest, Kelly Hoey. Welcome to the She Leads podcast.
I'm so thrilled to be here and having this conversation with you, Adrienne.
Oh, me too. We met, and I would say, I'm going to know the exact year because I know when you spoke at my conference. So we met in 2016 when the She Leads conference kind of transitioned from what it was. It was a conference that I did with a really good friend of mine that I was actually just thinking about this morning, Laura Lates. We had a conference called WomanCon, the conference for women. And she moved on to other things, and I kept the conference going. And I was familiar with your work because I think I had listened to you on a podcast, and I wanted you to be on, I think it was our podcast panel, but you had your book at the time. And once I started learning about you and everything that you were doing to help women, I said, I have to have Kelly at my conference. So that's how we all met. And you just bring such incredible intelligence and energy and just this wonderful sense of wanting to promote others and help form relationships. So, can you tell us, because I know you in that way, how did you get to kind of start in on this whole build your dream network and the power of networks type of we're in New York City, people.
Hello, New York.
Hello, New York. How did you sort of get your start and really focus on networks and the power of networks?
That is such a great question because my career started as an attorney and very, I want to say, kind of traditional, long-term focus on how you build relationships for client development, and that focus and recognition that you needed to not only build external relations and have an external profile, but what was your profile and what were your relationships within, most law firms or corporations. They're quite big, right? They're partnerships, but they might as well be a corporation, right? So it started there. It was my own journey in terms of switching out of the practice of law into a management role and lessons I learned in that, having had a very rich and deep network in the law when and I'm going to say banking with the client work, but when I wanted to go and do something else, I was like, shoot, I don't have what I need. But
Mm.
really, I never thought I did anything special, Adrian, about networking like seriously did not think I did anything special.
Hmm.
And there's two pivotal moments, or maybe three pivotal moments on that. One was a boss saying to me, you need to tell people what you do. You need to
Mm.
tell them how you build relationships and how you do this. And I looked at him and told him it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard in my
It's
life.
like, how do you make a friend?
Like 10 years later, I was like, eating crow when Build Your Dream Network came out because I had to send it to him saying, you were instigator for this idea. Two, the conversation I had with Janet Henson, the founder of the global
Mhm.
business network 85 Broads, when
Hmm.
after a 30-minute phone call with her, she offered me a job that didn't exist because she
Ooh.
wanted she had met me or heard about me through 85 Broads and my membership in that network. And she called me and she's like, who are you and what do you do? And I laid out what I was doing in an alumni role. And I laid out my philosophy on networks and their value and how the interactions. And she's like, yeah, I need you to come be my president. And so, that happened. And then
Mm.
thirdly, I mean, sometimes the universe has just got to hit you over with a big old stick sometimes. And then the third was, must have been, let me think, 2014. So just, a short while before you and I really met. And two authors reached out to me to
Mm.
ask me to give my insights on networking for books that they were writing and publishing. And
Hmm.
I kind of went, yeah, okay, maybe I
Hmm.
should just write the book. And so that was the
Mm.
birth of Build Your Dream Network. That's how we
Ah,
met, all that kind of stuff. And that's, also that interest that led to the new book, The Social Billionaire.
I can't wait to dive into what the social billionaire is all about. And I want to rewind because it's so funny. The world is so small. So, Janet Hansen was also a keynote speaker at one of my conferences, which is maybe how I got to know you. And we actually had one of the conferences at 85 Broad Street, one of the She Leads conferences. Yeah. So, I'm a huge fan of Janet's and everything that she just continues to do for women. And she was the originator of the Elevate Network that I think everybody knows, sold to Sally Krawcheck and has transformed so much, but it's still going. Just super interesting. And one of the things that we talk about on the podcast a lot is how important it is for women to truly understand their finances and to make sure that we are great stewards of our money, our capital. And I talk about this all the time, and I it we have to talk about this more. How when women have access to capital, we do great things with it in the world. And I'm not just talking about donating, right? I'm talking about using that money to really, help people start businesses that solve problems. And I hope that everybody that listens into this podcast takes away from this conversation that is going to be so amazing. How do you build your social capital so that you can then also build your capital so that you can do great things that benefit society? So I cannot wait to dive into this. I haven't had the opportunity to read the book yet or to work the book,
Yes,
right?
work the book, work
The
this
work the
book.
book. I can't wait to dive in and work this book. But can you tell us what prompted this latest writing of this book? What is it? What did you really want to communicate through this amazing book?
So what prompted this book was being asked by Good Morning America to comment on a piece of research that showed that it was looking at the communication patterns of individuals in a leadership program, bracket Ivy League
Okay.
MBA, and it showed that one group of women did particularly well,
Hmm.
and that they had a different network and communication, like through the communications, a different network strategy than anybody else.
Hmm.
And so here you had a pool of people, but by definition, equally ambitious, equally credentialed, equally motivated. And what was different here? And so what they discovered was that the women who didn't do as well networked like the men who did well.
Hmm.
And the women who did really well had this different network strategy. So there was a lot of, oh my God, here we go. Women have to do things harder. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is fantastic news, this study.
Yeah.
Here's the recipe. Here's the two networks you need to leverage, or you need to look and see how you're engaging and interacting. Like, there's the recipe. Then I want to say that was late 2019. And then that little thing called COVID happened. Anyway, which
Oh.
was fantastic because then I got to like dive down a rabbit hole of research because, well, a really outstanding study out of an Ivy is great. That's a very limited pool of women,
Yes.
right? So I'm like, where else does this pattern show up? So I'm researching, and it's like, women entrepreneurs in Bangladesh and middle managers in Germany and women in film and women in higher education and women in, management roles, in Australia. Like, you name a study, I was like down that rabbit hole and parsing it, pulling it apart, and also running a coaching cohort to work through the concepts and see,
Ooh.
yeah, like how does this all work and what is the right way to, I want to say share and deliver this information. And as a
Mm.
result of that, we now have the social billionaire.
Wow. So, what did this initial study say about what the difference was between the women that successfully, quote unquote, networked and those that didn't? Can you
Yeah.
reveal?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. So what it showed was, and let's do it in the context of that particular study because, like I said, it's a really great one as a learning tool. But as I said, my research didn't stop there. It was like, where else does this
It
show up?
doesn't apply across, right?
Yeah, let's make sure that this formula applies everywhere as opposed just to, women in an MBA program. So what
Mhm.
it showed was to be successful, the men, looking at the men who were successful in landing internships and roles and all that kind of stuff, they just needed to be centrally positioned within the information flows. So
They
being
just
a
needed to stand there.
Yeah. They needed to, they weren't like a day late and a dollar short with information. They knew what was going on. They were getting the information in a timely manner. They had their ear to the ground. Maybe there was things they were involved with, but that's what they needed to do. And these one group of women, that's what they did. They just
Mhm.
did the same thing these guys did.
Mhm.
What these successful women, oh, we're gonna have a big old New York in a second. Woo woo. What these the more successful women did, really,
They're
like
really
rudeness.
successful.
Yeah, that like woo woo. That's right. That's our cheering on these
Woo,
successful women.
woo.
So what these other women did was, yes, they made sure they were also attuned to what was going on within the public information flows in the MBA program and on
Mhm,
campus with employers, all that, student groups. They were aware of all of that. And they were in those flows.
mm.
And they had a second network, which was an inner circle, cohort or clique, as they referred to it in the study, um, primarily, not exclusively, but primarily of other like-minded women
Hmm.
with diverse networks.
Hmm.
So let's put it into practice. You hear on campus about an employer who's hiring, and you're thinking, you know what? I might just take my little MBA, down to Goldman Sachs or Bank of America or Capital One or Fortress or whoever. And there's, going to be a career fair or there's going to be an application process. What the dudes, they could just go off and do that. What these women would do is they take that information and then they take it to the smaller group. And they would
Okay.
be like, okay, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Here's the ones I'm applying for. This is what I want to do. And this is where they could get feedback, they could get advice. One of them could say, "Oh, you want to apply to, you know, XYZ company, when they say they only want a one-page, CV, they mean it because my cousin works there, and if you put it on a page and a half, they're gonna ding you. Like, it's getting that kind of whisper network back channel. The
Mm.
the key to having, I wanna say, like-minded, because so many women will say to me, "Oh, but I've got my sister or my mom or my cousin or whatever," and I'm like, "Your best friend from wherever." I'm like, yes, and you gotta give the right network the right job to do. If your
Mm.
sister, your mom, your cousin, your best friend isn't in the same kind of driver's seat of their career as you are, you may be getting their fears, anxieties, like
Yeah.
limitations versus someone who's gonna look you straight in the eyes and say, "I don't care if you wanna wear that suit. Right? I don't
Don't.
care. Oh, yeah, don't wear it. Or I don't care if their website says, business casual. They are suit people. So put on your bloody suit and go to the career fair in that. Like, show them that you know what they're
Mm.
like. It's that little bits of stuff that takes your application or your resume, that first impression, it takes it out of, the big inbox of everybody else and gets it
Yeah.
where it needs to be.
Hmm. This is so fascinating. For a hot minute, I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I always say it was the best job on paper and the worst job of my life. But I did learn a lot about how important building relationships is. And what you are describing is very much what many of these consultants do. So it's not just about, you know, having relationships, going to play golf, going to these events. It's more about when you are at an engagement and you're at a company, what are those, quiet centers of power almost? And what is unsaid that is super important? It's almost like the culture of it all, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that men, because they they're all in this game together. It's just something that is done naturally, and they wouldn't probably even be able to name it, right? And so women have got to do some of those things as well because we're not we don't tune into those types of things. I mean, because we don't, that's not how we necessarily operate, right? We're told if you are extraordinary at your job, there's no reason that you shouldn't get that role, but it's not about that.
Yeah,
It's about
and it's
all of this other stuff.
Yeah, and it might very well be, a guy who was saying that to you. And,
Yeah.
then we've got the layers of, people's perceptions and first impressions and bias. And, you can go down all of those, you know, all those
Yep.
that Rolodex of problems,
Yes.
right? Whereas, the reality is like, okay, that stuff exists. And because there were several longitudinal studies, like really outstanding, like we're talking 15-year studies within the same corporation. So again, you're comparing
Mm.
apples to apples. And even when they took into account, all the isms, racism, sexism, blah, 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 there were still these women
Mm.
excelling. And it was like, what
Mm.
did they do differently? And it was there, so it was more than the networks, right?
Yeah.
This was their approach to building relationships. They were continuously building relationships. They
Mm.
valued, were building and prioritized building relationships with other women.
Mm.
Exactly. They were very careful in their time allocation.
Mm.
So, in the sense of they realized mentoring or they realized networking is a priority, and they were very much like, okay, how much am I allocating to this? When am I allocating? Because they were very and always driven by their goals. So
Yeah.
that was
Okay.
so some of
Mm.
this when you say to women, this is sort of goal focused, intentional networking, they're like, oh, well, hold on a minute here. But I'm like, yeah, and all these studies show that the women
Mm.
who were transactional in their networking, because I think a lot of us would look at men and go, they're transactional in their style of networking. Men
Mhm.
build networking through activity. That
Yeah.
is, and that for many women, like, oh, you just take them to a ball game, you just do this. We would feel that feels transactional. Oh yeah, I need some new business. Let's take so and so golfing, right? We use some stereotypes on activities. So the women who fell into that bucket of doing those things, right? Behaving like the guys. Oh, I met him yesterday. I'm going to call him up and ask him for business. They didn't do as well
No.
as the women who were constantly prioritizing relationship building. Now, that
Mm.
doesn't mean that they're dropping everything else, but you think you look at it and you say, okay, when am I going to include this activity of relationship building? You know what? I'll show up to the meeting 5 minutes early. You know what?
Mm.
Three junior employees have asked me the same question. Guess what? I'm going to mentor them together rather than
Mm.
three separate meetings. And things like that where they were like, yes, I want to do this. Yes, I have my own stuff to do. And here's a way I can do it that, fits it in. So,
Wow.
yeah, I know there's
And
a lot.
I no, that it's a lot, and so I think I'm searching for, like, well, what's the formula there, though? And taking your buddies out on the golf course and doing business, it works, right? It works
Hmm.
for them. It doesn't necessarily work for women, but there's other activities, I'm
Yes.
sure, that women can do together as well that go beyond just, like having a Zoom. So what are some
Yeah.
of those things
Well,
that are
let me go back to
parallel, if you will?
yeah, let me go back to a word you used in setting up this question, which was formula, because there is a formula for success, and this is way that the social billionaire is laid out. Because I
Mm,
realized in doing the research, it wasn't just the networks and some high impact networking activities; it was other things as well. So
yeah.
it's, as I like to say, it's focus, it's grit, and it's networks. So
Yeah.
focus is your goals, your opportunities, and your values. That was
Mm,
a really key thing for these high
yes.
achieving women. Grit
Okay.
is your mindset, your time allocation, and your self care. It's like if you don't put your own oxygen mask on,
You're gonna
bingo.
die.
Yeah, you know what? You can't help anybody else, people. Like
Right.
that, there's a reason they say that on the airlines. And then the networks, it was, you sort of like this very particular network structure. It
Mm,
is some high impact networking strategies, and it is your social emotional relationships. Back to what I
okay.
said earlier, give the right network the right job to do. So, yes,
Mm,
personal relationships are really important. That's part of our self care, that's part of our values. And they can't be, the tail wagging the dog when it comes to, who we should be tapping for the insights and the connections and the feedback we need to take our careers forward. So, for anyone, the first thing I always say in terms of networking is you've got to audit the network you already have. What are you
yes.
doing? Like before you start thinking what you should be doing, what are you doing now?
Mm,
What are the ways that you're interacting and behaving, since a network, as you and I both know, Adrienne, is built by, it's a two-way street. It's built by
yeah.
mutual interaction. You've got to do that audit. You got to see what you've got. You've got to take a big hard look in the mirror and say, what am I doing to
Yeah.
nurture and grow this ecosystem? Because you know what? The
Mm,
problem with your network may not be the network. Just
right.
saying. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's the first thing you need to do. And then you got to look at some of these activities. Maybe they've reached their expiry date.
Mm,
Maybe being in a leadership role on a committee is the right thing for you, but you've been on the same one for 10 or 15 years. Might be
right.
time to change roles, right? So you
Mm,
need to go and look at that and really take a look at what is the richness that you have there. What are the activities that align with your values
mm,
that I want to say are worth your time because they give you energy? That might be
yep.
the best place for you to network versus,
Mm,
someone else telling you to go off and do something.
mm,
Then, in terms of high impact activities, one of the really key ones that women do not do
mm. I can't
is
remember
a
this.
networking strategy called brokering.
Okay.
And what that is when you're sitting between two pieces of your network and
Mhm.
you spot an opportunity for one or the other, and you know that you can broker that introduction, you can facilitate that, meeting. So whatever their outcomes come about, right? So let's take your podcast for an example.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm, a fan of your podcast. I've listened to your podcast. Now I'm a fan of you, right? So it's it, right? All before I'm sitting here on the podcast. I know what the podcast is about, right?
Mm,
Who am I out there in the world talking to and meeting that I go, hold on a minute here. Adrian's audience is the audience you want to connect with,
yeah.
right? Maybe, hey, I bet Adrian would love some sponsors for her podcast. This person wants to get in front of these women, and this audience. They don't know where they are. Maybe there's a
Make the
possibility
intro.
here. Maybe I can
Yep.
say, like, have you ever thought about hosting, a podcast to this person in my network? And here's one for you. Why don't you listen to it? And I'll make an introduction to Adrian,
Mm,
and then facilitating that sort of thing. It is not, brokering is not the you two should know each other and I'll let you figure it out from here. That is
right.
networking BS. That is
Mm,
annoying. That is unhelpful. This is seeing, oh, hold on a minute here. I've recently brokered some introductions. I want to say a friend in real estate who's working with high net worth. This is a new
hmm.
area for him. And a friend who, through her philanthropy advising, has been dealing with high net worth people for a very long time.
Wow.
Both of them do not come from this world. And I'm like,
Mm,
you two don't know each other exist. Here's how I think you could be helpful to each other, right?
yeah.
You're both navigating a strange new little wonderland. Here's
Mm.
like, it's like Dorothy finding the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, right?
Yep.
And the lion. Here we go. And so it's like, now I've introduced them. Now it's like, oh, yes, I can give you feedback because I have been talking to these high net worth individuals for a much longer period of time than you have. When you
Mm,
need a gut check, when you need a, hey, what do you think? They're saying this. What does that really mean? They now have a safety zone to do that with,
mm.
as well as creating business opportunities for each other.
Hey, everyone. So, for years, I've been working with Dr. Kent and sending people in my network his way. He does so much impact work. What do I mean by that? Well, he helps people create books and podcasts and things like that. He even helps with this podcast behind the scenes. Dr. Kent is my thought partner. Anyone listening knows that we all need to do what we can to get our thoughts, opinions, and voices out into the world, and how important it is for women to invest in other women and for women to hire other women. I am all about that, and you all know that. But in this case, I think Dr. Kent is an exception. He's doing something really different via this new program that he's launched called the Genius Discovery Program. So he wants to work with people like me and like you who are impact driven. Dr. Kent has an intensive program that goes for a month. He also has a 3-month program where he figures out where you're headed with your brand, your business, your speaking, and your signature story as a thought leader. I've known Dr. Kent for a long time. So believe me when I say that he has a ton of experience working with people that are looking to make an impact but might not know exactly how to approach that. So if you're interested in talking to him, you can go directly to talktokent.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram at She Leads Media, or just shoot me an email over at hello@sheleadsmedia.com. So now let me ask this question because I do find myself in this position often because I do know so many people and we're all trying to do great things in this world. And I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love connecting people with one another. And
Mm-hmm.
so you, as the broker, you sort of quote unquote get the credibility of being the person who really truly is the connector, right? Between all
Mm-hmm.
of this or among all of these different people and nodes and all of it. As the broker, when you are, when you don't necessarily benefit, um, right? That sometimes does not feel great.
Okay, here's where I challenge you on that.
Yes, please.
It feels great when it adds great value, right? And it's that kind of networking generosity that you're like, this will come back to me. I'm just
Mm,
doing this because this is going to make some magic happen here, right?
yeah.
We're also, let's look at it from a time allocation, right? Back to my
Yep.
That's
The
the second
formula.
pillar, grit, okay?
Yep.
How much easier is it to send a few emails and network with a few people than having to get on their calendar,
Yes.
schedule a
Oh,
coffee
yeah.
date, all that.
Yes.
Okay, next thing you know, it's 6 months and nothing's happened. Like, if you
Right.
can there's times to network from your keyboard, and brokering is one of them, right? And it's
Mm.
adding the things that they can't see. And I would say, from the position where women are from networking generosity, I will admit to you, it doesn't feel good to me sometimes. And then I sit back and say, why didn't this feel good? I'm like, oh, because this person's not going to nurture and care. I've now realized this person's not going to nurture and care for my network and my contacts the same way I do. And
Yeah.
so there definitely are things that I think about, and that's not a hesitation. It's just like, are they going to nurture this connection as well as I do? Because if I have any doubt in my gut, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do it. I might
Yeah.
go to other person and say, I've thought about making this introduction. This is what they do, and this is why I thought it would be a good one. But I've got some hesitancy. But I leave it to you if you wanted to, reach out to them on your own and make
Right.
inquiries. Rock and roll, but not me. Um, but yeah, if I'm feeling kind of icky about it, then I'm like, okay, what's the real sort of
What's the reason behind it?
what's that?
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
two areas that are really key in terms of high impact strategies:
Mhm.
churn, which is network churn. You need to look and see where's the stuff that's stale, right?
Mm.
Where you may be over indexing with a particular part of your network, and you're like, you know what, I
Yes.
got to churn my own activities. I don't need to do this with them every week. I can see them once a month. I would like Or like, think about like committees and things. Guess what? Everybody knows me in this organization. I can now step back from a direct leadership role, right? I'm going to put someone who works with me or someone else who I see as a rising star in the organization. I'm going to put them in the leadership role. My name is still in the room. I can still contact people and know what's going on, but I don't have to do the heavy lifting. So churn
Yeah.
is a big thing. Churn could also be, gee, I've been turning to this person all the time for business advice, and yeah, it's not been so good lately. Like, maybe I got to
Right.
churn them out. I'm not ditching the relationship. I'm not abandoning it. I'm like, I need some fresh ideas and fresh insights and a new way to look at these things.
Yeah.
And then the other high impact activity is visibility, and that is really looking at, when we talked earlier about these two networks, you sort of your inner circle and this, broader professional networks where you need to kind of know what's going on. Where's your visibility in those,
Mm.
right? And what is it that you need to do to have that visibility? Do you need to contribute it to a newsletter or write an article? Do you need to, push them to be, on a podcast or be on a panel or speak at an annual event? Do you need to take a leadership role? Like, how and where are you visible? Because some of those professional networks, your visibility may be, I just need to go to the annual conference every year, and
Right.
I need to sit in the lobby, at the conference center and say hello to everybody. Guess
Yep.
what?
Just I'm here.
I'm
Right.
here, right? And
Yeah.
that is a true example with a finance conference that happens in South Florida every year. And what you learn after the first time you go is, yeah, you just need to sit in the lobby.
That's a great piece of information, right?
Right, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's probably something your inner circle could tell you. Oh, I've been 5 times. Here's how you
Right.
work that conference, right? So you see how these kind of levers go. But
Mm.
those, I'm going to say, churn, visibility, and brokering, like, those are really key activities, and
Mm.
high impact, because so many women, you probably hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. They don't have time to do any networking, she says in air quotes. And it is the
Right.
most important thing we can do for our business, our ventures, our aspirations, our dreams, our success.
It's really, gosh, I'm taking in everything that you're saying, and my mind is going in all of these places because I think that when women say that they don't have time, what then happens is they cut out part of this more 360-degree picture that could not only benefit them, but then benefits the whole entire network. So they
Mhm.
almost like, because of the time constraint, they default to transactional. And then
Yep.
and then it feels yucky, right? Like, please introduce me to here because I need to get business, da 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 da. And then they go and they're off to the races doing whatever they're doing, but then they never come back and then play the role of the broker, right?
Right.
Almost to give back because they're time constraint. And
This
it's an
yeah,
investment.
right. Well, and this model, this, I wanna say, focus, grit, networks model of success, right? It is very much, and this is why this is a workbook. That's why I structured this and designed it as a workbook. Is and it's a lot of inner work, right?
Yeah.
But by definition, the way it works is if you follow this model, you will and you have to, for your own success, lift up other women towards their success. Because
Yeah.
again, go back to what do these women do differently? They network and prioritize networking with other women.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's the key to all of this is how do you then circle back and give forward? That's how this flywheel starts, and the
Yeah,
proof that you're talking about is that, yeah, there are a lot of other people doing it in a different way, and they're actually wasting their time because they're not as successful as the women that do take the time to do these extra activities. They're not extra activities.
they're
They're
essential.
critical components
Right.
of
And
this whole entire flywheel.
yes, and
Yeah.
this flywheel for women to be the high achieving, successful women they
Good
want to be,
stuff, Kelly.
they have to prioritize and network with other women. It's just and that's where you're giving back. So this isn't like sitting there thinking, "Oh, here's all the things I need." You're like, if you've got an inner circle and you're asking them for advice, well, guess what, honey? They're going to be asking you too. So
Yeah.
get ready to pull out your network to help somebody else.
Yeah, this is so good. And so, why do you think that women have not sort of caught up to this? It's because they haven't read your book yet. We know that. But or haven't worked your book. Why don't you think more women sort of take this approach? What do you think is the obstacle there?
Well, I mean, for me, when I read this study, and some of it does pick up on some of the things I was saying in Build Your Dream Network, so it wasn't that alien. But when I
Mm,
was asked to comment on the study I mentioned, I was like, where has this information been all my career? And it's
right.
buried away in academic journals. So there's
Mm,
amazing social scientists who've been looking at this for years,
mm,
like incredible stuff. And I'm like, yo, we need to get it out of the academia
yes.
and into action. And that's really
Yeah.
what I hope the social billionaire is for women.
So this works not only for women that are seeking leadership roles within larger corporations, but also for women entrepreneurs. Do you see anything different with the way that, successful women entrepreneurs are using the power of their network to launch businesses that get past that $1 million mark, because so few women get past that mark. So, how can they even use these principles to help propel themselves past there?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the big reason for doing so much more research than the initial study or two that I looked at was like, where else does this pattern? As I sort of noted, it falls. I was at like the research, little rabbit hole I fell down like Alice in Wonderland, from women in film to women in higher education to women entrepreneurs, women in management. So, and globally. Um,
Mhm.
so, where I find with women in business is and thinking in terms of like people wanting the answer in a formula. They're sort of like, just how do I do this? Like, just give me the one thing. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it is personalized, it is individualized. But the most important thing to think about if
Mm.
you were an entrepreneur, I'd be like, starting where this book starts. What's your goal? What are you focused on? What
Yeah.
right now? Okay, now I want you to no, don't tell me I want to get to $1 million. Tell me, all right, I want to get to $1 million. Okay, that's your overarching kind of big umbrella goal. What are the things underneath that? What are the milestones? What are the questions you have about that? Okay, who are the networks and relationships you need? right?
Yeah.
I often find people, particularly entrepreneurs, they're like, well, I need, and I'm like, yeah, but what does the business need? So when you're
Right.
writing your goal and the milestones and the sub goals, thinking about it, what does the business need? That may necessitate, in terms of your network, a lot of churn. There may be an
Right.
advisory board that you need for the next 3 months. There may be a different advisory board you may need for the next 9 months. I'm a big
Yes.
fan of term limits on boards and things.
I love this.
But
Yeah.
people always think that, oh, well, I'll just get this structure in place. And it's like, no, no, you need a structure. But this is like musical chairs, particularly for an entrepreneur. What stage are you at? The information you need when you're starting out versus when you're scaling versus when you're, entering a new market versus, all of those different things. The board member who, got you, into being incorporated and all that kind of stuff may not be the board member, right? To
And
get you
probably is
to,
not.
right. And so
Yeah.
sort of thinking about, all right,
Hmm.
and in this hard, let's both admit it, hard journey of being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
really being clear on what, you're tired, drained, exhausted, frustrated self needs, right? When our
Mhm.
ego needs to be like wrapped in cotton batting and taken care of, separate that out from the people who know how to get your business forward because they're not necessarily the same people.
Yeah. This brings up a real uh I can't think of the word, like attention,
Hmm.
because I do think that women, we tend toward loyalty, and we are
Hmm.
so grateful for the people that have helped us. And so, almost like the people that have got us to a certain point, we feel guilty and we don't want to leave those people behind. But if you're building a business or you're building your career, it does require what you said, it requires churn. So how do you elegantly churn and still maintain those relationships? Because they might not be important right now at this stage, but they are important people.
Right. And when I say churn, this is not like, a flush.
Right.
So we do have
Thank
those
you.
people, right? Like, right, there are those
Yes.
people, right? But this is
Yes.
like, you've been in this role. I now need somebody else to, take that seat. And here's the interaction and the role that we're going to have now.
Mm,
The best advice I would have in this situation, particularly for entrepreneurs, is you set it up in advance in the sense of, hey, Adrian, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. You're really accomplished podcast host. Here's some of the questions I have about, starting a podcast. Can we have a conversation? So you look at it and you're like, all right, here's my advice on this because, use this, I've tried every platform, use Riverside, I've done this, do this, da, 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 da. But yeah, why don't we have a 15-minute conversation on, outcomes and what you can expect on how long it may take? Okay.
mhm.
And then it's very much, thank you. If I have any other questions,
Right.
Adrian, can I contact you in the future? Right.
Right.
I don't need to be like, oh, I got to talk to Adrian every week about my podcast, right? Like, right.
Right.
So you set up in advance, like, here's what I need. All right. This point is, and this is where I think, particularly for entrepreneurs, that understanding like, this is where my business need is right now. Hey, this is what my business needs over the next 6 months. You have done these things over the next 6 months. Do you think you could help me achieve X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
You're giving, sort of a boundary, parameters on the engagement. You're letting them know the time, right? You know the expectations. It also gives the other person the opportunity to say, "That's amazing. Glad that's what you need from someone, and you're really thinking about your business clearly. And by the way, I'm going away for the next 6 months." Right. So
Right.
you're not just assuming there's someone else is going to jump in, or they're like, yeah, I'm more than willing to help you, but I'm away a lot the next 6 months. So we're going to have to do this by email. Right. So we're not now getting frustrated or feeling guilty or, everybody is clear
Mm,
on expectations. So in this
yeah.
scenario, set it up in advance in terms of what you need them for and why. Lay it all out. Listen, this is my preliminary advisory board. I'm going to ask you to do this for a year. We will talk about it at the end of the year of how we move forward. But right now,
Yeah.
here's my 1-year plan to get my idea off the ground or to get this new product launched or whatever it may be. You know,
Mm.
this sort of idea of like, oh, I love you. Can you be on my advisory board? Yeah, that's not helpful to anybody. You get
No, it's not.
resentful because they're not doing
Yes.
anything and you're not getting what your business needs. You know,
Yeah.
so that's what I would
Yeah,
do.
this is I love it, and I think that communication is at the center of all of it too, and clear communication, and, not feeling that you're being transactional, but you're stating what it is that you need at this point in time, and I think that as women, we can all learn and practice how to do that, and I think by making sure that you are very, um thoughtful about how you're building your network. It always comes back to like an assessment. The way that you're speaking about everything, I almost feel like it's, what's the situation analysis, right? From an objective point of view, and then what are we trying to achieve? How do we get there? What are the gaps? Where are the places that we can fill those things in? And then being very clear about this is my situation, this is the gaps. Can you or somebody that you know help me to fill those for right now? And just making sure that we're clearly communicating all of these things instead of I feel sometimes when we're talking to other women that it's like, oh, it's and I don't mean to paint a wishy-washy picture because I think women are badasses in the
We,
best
we
way
are,
possible.
we are.
At the same time, we are hyper aware of, people's feelings and that we don't want to take advantage of them. And I think what happens sometimes is we then soften our language and maybe approach things in a wishy-washy way because we don't want to, you know, rock the boat, harm people's feelings, make them think we're transactional. But, I think we need to be
Let's
a little bit more forthright.
Well, I think the kindest thing you can do is to be
Yeah.
forthright because
Yeah.
you give the other person the opportunity to say, "Wow, that's amazing, and it doesn't fit within my timeline," or
Yeah.
"That's not my expertise," or, when you say and state what you need, you know,
Mm.
a
Life
lot of
lesson.
yeah, a lot of us have the tendency to think, "Okay, you know what? Like, I will soften it," or I will kind of say, "Well, I'm sort of looking for," we'll use a career example. "I'm looking for a job," right? Or, an
Right.
entrepreneur example, "I'm looking for an investor." Okay, this little thing that sits between your ears, right? Your conscious brain, that part of this little thing between your ears, it's got too much going on.
Yeah.
If you give to somebody else a vague ask, that part of our brain is like, no bueno, shutting down. No, no, louder than sirens in New York City, right? Like it is just going to shut it down. But when you go for something specific, it
Yes.
busts through that noise. And that's when it gets to your subconscious brain. And someone used the example once, the analogy, they said, your subconscious brain is like a dog that's looking
Mm.
for that bone it's buried. And it's like, oh, let's go find an answer. Let's go find an answer, right? And it's running
Yeah.
around trying to see where you've met someone before, or where you've had that experience. All of us, right?
Yeah.
It behooves us to be like precise in what we're looking for. It
Mm.
behooves us to sit there and listen to what someone else really needs, because that's when you can start opening up opportunities.
So good. So I love this thought that I had. So you've written 2 books now, right? And when I think when you write books, you pour what's maybe in your subconscious onto the page, right? You almost get it out of you and you're like, okay, next. Now I'm moving on to this next thing. You've just completed and launched the Social Billionaire. How has writing that book changed you? And what are you onto next?
Oh, this book. So I think the first book in terms of being in, the place to write it and being asked by two other authors for my insights and going in a very quiet library voice. I think I remember where I stood and I was like, and that I think it served a different purpose in terms of a reinvention and a healing and getting my confidence back.
Mm,
Um, and this one, which had a different route to publishing, I was like, I just want to get this information out there. And
right.
once I was like, why did I write this book? I wanted this book, I wanted this information out of academia into women's hands. And I wanted it in a format that I'm like, well, I can do that. No one's
Right.
stopping me, right? Let
Right.
me just get this information out there. And then once sort of over that hurdle, I was like, okay, what's another thing that kind of would scare me that I haven't thought of doing? And
Mm.
as you may know, I grew up in Canada. I grew up reading, Margaret Atwood and Alice Munro, and probably at an age that I shouldn't have been reading those books, but I was reading them. Um, and I have always sort of said, oh, well, I could never write fiction. And guess what I'm jumping into now, Adrienne? I'm writing some fiction.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. It's going to be a different process, probably a different part of your brain because the logical, let me lay this out for you, like here's, what we need to
This is
do.
all hard. This is all this because
This is all hard. Yeah.
I needed the social billionaire. I think like from Build Your Dream Network to writing fiction, that wasn't going to happen. The Social Billionaire it's the bridge,
It's the
between
bridge.
those two things because there's so much heart in this one,
Mm.
in the way it's laid out, the way I presented the information, the reflections, the exercises, the tools. It's very like heart centered.
Introspective.
Yes. And very heart centered and like what matters to you?
Mm.
Like what
Mm.
drives us, it's not just, fill in the blank, right? It's relationships drive us, succeeding drives us as women, even if we've been successful. Like, so this is right. All right. Why does this matter to you? All right.
Right.
What do you need to sustain you? What are the
Yeah.
relationships you need? So this is a very much a
Mm.
heart-centered book in terms of approaching the
Mm.
business relationships you need to excel and succeed. And I think that because of that, I was able to sort of think, yeah, I want to get my hand at this other thing.
Yeah, it's almost like it cracked open within you, like,
Hmm.
why am I doing this?
What's
And,
my goal? Like I had
what's
like
my goal? Yeah.
yeah, like I had to
Yeah.
do my own chapter on what is my focus. It's like, oh yeah, this matters to me, but if I'm going to be true to the social billionaire, I need to pursue this other thing too.
Oh, so good. Oh, I see movies in the future. I see a director sitting in front of me. Oh, yeah, Netflix specials, it's all happening.
Oh yeah,
I
it got to
can
be
totally
Netflix.
see that.
Yeah,
I
I got
can
too much of a
totally
potty
see
mouth
that.
for the Hallmark Channel.
No, 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 screw the Hallmark Channel. Oh my gosh, Kelly, this has been so wonderful. I've loved seeing you again and talking and you're going to come back with the next book, okay? And we'll talk about I don't even know what the realm of the topic is, but I cannot wait.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. This has just been a ball.
So much fun. Okay. Oh, how can I forget? How can people get in touch with you? How can they get the book? Please tell us everything.
So the book is available on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. If you go to bookshop.org, you can order it from, bookstores there. I recommend the paperback, but it is an ebook as well. Rakuten and all the big, ebook sites, they have the book. And my website is jkellyhoey.co. So JKELLYHOEY.co. And that's got all the links and stuff of where to find me, from the newsletter to the book to email to whatever else.
Love it. Love it. We will put all of that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently, please take a moment to leave a 5-star rating and review. It's not just about boosting the show, it's about amplifying the voices of women entrepreneurs who are leading with vision, building with purpose, and shaping what's next. We need more of these conversations in the world right now, don't you think? And if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone who matters to you, send this episode to them. If there's something on your mind about leadership, legacy, or what's next, I want to hear it. Head to sheleadsmedia.com/voice and leave a voice memo or note. Your insight might just help shape a future episode. Make sure to follow the show and come back next week for more conversations you won't hear anywhere else. Thank you so much for listening. This is the She Leads Podcast Network. is the She Leads Podcast Network.